This is my home office, and it's the place where I want to demonstrate to you today some of the basics about using microscopes. I want to show you two different types of microscopes. These will be, I think, separate videos. Now, this particular microscope that I have right here, you might have seen, you might have used in botany or something else in a prior class or prior school. This is called a compound light microscope. It uses a series of lenses to magnify an already magnified image. And these are very special microscopes. We spend a lot of money on these, and you get to use the good stuff, even as a freshman. But with any privilege comes responsibility. And so what I want to show you is some particulars of the way I'm going to require you to use microscopes. And I'll even show you some of the ways that other people don't bother telling you about, and mistakes that other professors and scientists routinely make. And so what I want to do is go through the parts of the scope. This will be on your upcoming lab quiz. I think this will be on the Periphery lab quiz. I want to show you a little bit how this works, but most importantly, this is going to matter for how you use it. So we will be taking a look as you're using the microscopes through this class and in future classes, such as cell biology, that you're likely to take this coming fall. And in those courses, we're going to expect that you know what you're doing. So everybody needs to pay attention, not only to just the naming of the parts and what they do, but really the utility of how all of this works. So I've got some cheat sheet notes here to remind me to tell you about a few things. Got myself a container of microscope slides here, and I want to literally tell you the steps that I go through. I guess the other thing to tell you is that I have been working with microscopes now for about 42, 43 years, starting back in the 1970s when I was a college student. And the particular research area that I've gone into uses microscopes like these all the time. I have literally spent a summer of, 40 hours a week times 10 weeks. So 400, 500 hours under a microscope for a summer. I've spent thousands of hours both for my research, for my master's and my PhD. So I've used these a lot and lots of different kinds of microscopes. I advocated for us purchasing a lot of these really good ones. That was an easy case within the biology department, by the way, because all the professors wanted the good scopes. So let me take you through the steps, a little bit of the parts of the microscope right now. So I'm going to turn this around and show you just a few of the basic things right now. Down here on the bottom of the scope is the switch. It's what we call a toggle switch, bink, bink, that turns on the light. And over here is a sliding bar that varies the intensity of that light. Some of you may know this as a rheostat. A rheostat is something where you can vary the intensity of a light or vary the intensity of a fan, for example, not just in set stages, but really through a continuous full to low range that you can use. Not sure where else you might have used this kind of thing, but it's called a rheostat. And it's a different kind of electricity, and I've screwed these things up before, so I've learned a lot about them. Here, of course, where you're going to look through with your eyeballs, and we got two of the eyepieces, so it's called a binocular microscope. And some of you may know these things, which are simply called binoculars. And what I'm not showing you, and where I'm sitting, I'm facing a very large picture window, taking a look out into a pond where I live. So this is what I've wanted to do all my life, and there's lots of wildlife that runs around, and so I'm perched right here where I work. Bird feeders just outside here, and we've got a nuthatch, and it looks like a chickadee, and also maybe a blue jay flittering around out there just as well. So binoculars, binocular microscope, okay? These things right here are also part of the magnification system, and these are called objectives. These objectives are the most expensive part of the microscope. These are usually very nicely refined, and if you pay extra, when you look through and see the image, so perhaps you've done this before, And when you look at that circular image through the microscope, when you focus everything really nicely, do you notice that everything in the field of the view is in focus? Or maybe just pretty much the center of the field of view is in focus. Well, that's cheaper lenses have just the center pretty much. So of the whole field of view, maybe just the middle is really sharply focused. We paid extra for what's called plan, P-L-A-N, like you make plans for the weekend. Plan, if you actually look it up as word roots go, I think it means flat. Oh, well, look at this right here. See, I'm in my office, so we'll look it up. So this is your word root book, and I just want to make sure that I've got this right. So we're going to look it up while we're here. Yeah, I know you thought I was going to be demonstrating microscopes. Plan means flat or level. Nailed it. Okay, that's that little good book. Plan objectives, you pay more for that. Okay. Plan objectives, when you focus, then almost everything should be in focus in the whole field of view. So these can be really, really expensive, and there's no question that the 4 objectives that we see here, their value is worth more than the rest of the microscope. Okay? So if you had to buy 4 new objectives, you're buying mostly a brand new microscope. And that brings me to another point. We move between objectives, and you undoubtedly have done this before, but mistake number 1 that people make. Mistake number 1 is they touch the objectives. Nope, we're not going to touch objectives. And if I see you touch an objective, I'm going to call you out right in the middle of the class, and I might be excited and say, "Whoa, wait a minute! You're touching the objective. Remember that video?" That's this video. I told you don't touch the objectives. So there's a ring right here, a ring where these objectives are mounted. Technically, the ring's called the nose piece. Not so sure that's that important. It's a ring, and it's got the objectives on it. And if you actually look at this particular microscope closely, and maybe you can see them right here, it's got little notches in it. What do you think those notches are for? So you can get a better grip when you're turning the objectives from one power to the next. That's the answer. Okay. Now, why don't you want to touch the objectives? Well, first of all, your sweat is corrosive, and this is a metal. So some of you may know that when we have historically important documents, that we don't touch those documents with our raw skin. We wear gloves. Okay. And that's in part to prevent transferring oils and sweat from our fingers to those important documents. All right. So that's one thing. But another thing is, these objectives are actually screwed in. And if you keep touching them and rotating with them, you could unscrew them a little bit. Okay, so maybe they just won't work. Why is that a big issue? Well, I want to show you exactly why that's a really big issue. Okay. When you swing these objectives into place, they're going to be really close to the microscope slide. In fact, the distance between the tip of the objective and the upper edge of the slide that you're working on. So this is the objective coming down, and you got your microscope slide here. That distance between there is called the working distance. And that working distance gets smaller and smaller and smaller as you go to higher and higher magnifications. Okay. So right now I'm on the shortest objective, and that's what we need to always do when we start out looking at a microscope slide and when we put microscopes away. Further, we never put a slide on the scope without using the lowest power objective to give us that greatest working distance. Well, as we turn now to the next higher magnification objective, you'll notice that it's longer and the working distance is smaller. Well, what happens if when I'm turning the objectives, I'm always touching the objectives and I loosen that objective up? That will shrink the working distance and potentially make it non-existent. And so if there is no working distance, think about this. Think of everything I've just told you. If there's no working distance, then what's happened when you move the objective over the slide? And the answer is the objective crashed into the slide and broke the slide and scratched the objective and maybe ruined the objective, and that's hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So now you're starting to understand why I'm kind of fussy about this, because I don't want you to ruin my microscopes. Okay, so that working distance gets closer and closer as we move in, and we do not want these objectives out of place. We want them nicely screwed in. Leave them alone. We'll take care of it. Okay, so let's go through the steps now of actually turning on the scope and putting a slide on. And I want to talk to you about some particulars here. Okay, well, I'll tilt the scope just a little bit here. Let's see if I can see the lighting enough. It's not showing up very well here. Over here is a stage clip. There you can see it a little bit. You can see it's a clip. And that's going to hold the slide on the stage. Thus the name stage clip. Okay. So I'm going to take a slide. I'm going to have the lowest power objective here. I'm going, before I do that, to use the focusing knobs. And there's a big one and a little one. Okay. Let's see. You can see that a little bit better. There you go. So there's a big focusing knob and a little one. The big one moves the stage quickly. Look at that. You can see the stage go up and down. I'm going to lower it to the lowest extent. And now if you see I'm moving the little one and you don't really see the stage moving much, that's the fine focus. And that's what it's doing. It's just barely moving this stage. Okay. So what I want to do when I put a slide on is I want the lowest power objective, and I want to drive that stage down. Next step, okay. Microscope slides. How do we handle them? Well, this is one acceptable way, and that is handle them by their edges. Another acceptable way is to grab them by the label. But what you'll notice when you look at microscope slides is that there's a slide and then there's probably some very flat specimens for you to look at, maybe things that have been sectioned, like slicing bread, and then like laying down bread on your slide, microscopic bread, little bitty bread. Not sure that that would be much of a meal. And then we put a glass cover slip on this. There's also some sticky material we put on in between the glass cover slip and the specimens, and that's called mounting medium. Now, students in cell biology will learn to make microscope slides, starting probably with a live frog and ending with sections of its liver, or stomach, or skin. And you'll do that this fall. And you can make a living at that. And I've had graduates, when I taught cell biology, who went on and that was it. They worked for 5 years making microscope slides. Talk about the practicality of all that I'm talking about. You can make a living at this, and you're going to be making microscopes this fall. So this really helps to pay a lot of attention, and I'm kind of happy about recording this because you'll be able to come back and look at it later on. All right, so I'm handling the slide either by the edges or on that label. I prefer the edges because you could even start to wipe off the labels. And you do not want to put fingerprints on the glass, because that makes it tough to see. And if you think about it, we'll know who put their fingerprint on the slide, won't we? That's where we practice a little CSI. Yeah, we could fingerprint you and then compare it to what's on the slide and know who the guilty party is. So don't do it, okay? By the way, if you ever do need to clean a microscope slide that's mounted like this, you have to do it very, very carefully. You don't press on the slide because you could squeeze that mounting medium and break the really thin cover slip. Okay. Now what we're going to do, of course, label side up so you can read it. I'm going to open that stage clip right here. I'm going to press it back. And I'm going to put the slide on here. And then something important. So another mistake that you could make. Slowly, I'm going to let that clip down. Now, not sure you can see this really, really well here, but if you let that clip really quickly snap, it could chip the edge off the slide. And if you look really, really close there, you can see on this particular slide, somebody's already done that. Not good. Now, if you were raised in a home like I was, you would learn that when a small piece of glass flies in the air and you've broken one of our slides, as my mom taught me, there is only one place that small piece of glass can go. It will go in your eye and blind you. That's what our parents pretty much tell us. Well, I hope that all the places that the glass could go, that it won't hit your eye and blind you. But you still would have broken my slide, okay? So don't do that. Okay? So pulling the clip out and very, very carefully putting that slide back. Okay? Now, I skipped a step, and I want to talk to you about that. And that is, what is the first magnification that you use to examine a microscope slide? The answer is 1. You look at it. So if you were to look at this slide, let's see if I can get a nice white piece of paper here behind it. You were to look at this slide, right away you'd see that there's a whole bunch of sections on it, right? Lots of sections. And you can see roughly that the orientation is kind of long and thin, and that they're vertically arranged like this on the slide. Yep. But as soon as you put this slide on the stage here and start looking at it through the objectives, you're only going to see a small part of one of those sections. So you look at it with 1. Okay, well, what's on the slide? Some of the stuff in zoology, and in fact some of the stuff for sponges that you're looking at, are really, really small, and in the whole circle of the cover slip, there's only a few little dots. And you can see them with the naked eye. And you can have an idea of, oh, okay, so there's a couple over here, and there's one down there, and it's not in the middle. So if you spend all this time moving the slide around, you go, I can't find anything. That's right. Had you looked at this whole slide, you would have noticed there's a couple at the edge and another one down here. Saves you time. It's more efficient. And when we're working, those are good things. Okay? So now I got the slide on the scope. Now, a couple other things about this. First of all, the way I just mounted the slide to show you, I put the label on the wrong side. At least for me, the label should be to the left. And the reason that I like that, when I look through the scope, I'd like to see and read the label while I'm working on the slide. Further, you're going to learn that when you put multiple sections like this on, oops, give you that background, multiple sections on a slide like this, it's arranged like words are on a page. So it reads from the top right, across the row, and then starts on the bottom, and then reads across there too. Okay? And that's the way you'll mount sections like this. So when I have the slide facing me, I know clearly where the first section is, and then I can follow to later sections. Now at this point, I got a slide on the scope. You didn't know this was going to be that complicated, did you? Told you, I spent a lot of time on these things, so I really want to tell you the good stuff. Over here, we got to turn the thing on, okay? And so I'm going to turn the switch, that toggle switch on, and the light comes on. Yay, we have light. But what if I don't? And this is where critical thinking at its most basic level starts to come in. Well, why might I not have a light? Unfortunately, students often jump to the wrong conclusion at the beginning. Well, the light bulb doesn't work. Well, do you have it plugged in? I can't tell you, because I'm an old fart. I've been around for a long time. The number of times I've come over to a student and said, Dr. Zalisko, yeah, what's up? My light bulb's broken. What makes you think that? Well, it's not on. Good. And it's not on when you do what? Well, when I turn the switch. Right. Is there anything else needs to happen? And then they go, I forgot to plug it in. And then sometimes they say to me, nope, got it plugged in. That's good. Are you sure that that plug is well positioned in the back of the microscope? I mean, it comes out. Let's just see if you can push it in a little bit. That's about another third of my students. Sometimes it's even this. Now watch this. Watch this magic. So the light's on right now. You can see it right there, right? Just turned it off. Yeah. Now I'm going to move that rheostat bar that I was telling you about all the way down here to the lowest level. And now I'm going to turn the light on. There's no light. But I turned the switch on. Cord's good. Plugged in. Dr. Zalisko. My light bulb's out. Did you check the rheostat down here? I'll say. And then they'll go like this and they'll go, oh, I forgot to check the rheostat. So, it happens sometimes that the light bulbs go out. But it also happens that people didn't properly plug in the scope or plug it in to the scope or have the right setting here. And this will happen even more so with the other microscope I'll show you about that I have to go run to school and get. So when I'm done here, I'm going to have to make a separate film for that. So you got to make sure you got the light on. Now, let's talk about light levels. Right now, with using this little rheostat, if I pull it all the way back here, it's the brightest level light. Gosh, it's even hard for me to look at. You can see how bright that is. Whoa. Don't use that much light. Turns out blasting your specimen with light does not make the best image. What it does do is gives you a headache if you're looking at it for more than like a half an hour. And we used to joke, and I taught lots of classes where students were looking through microscopes. The students would be looking through the microscope, and they'd call me over. We do this all the time. And I'd look in, and I'd say, wow, this is bright. They say, really? I'd say, yeah. And then this is the joke, because it's not true. I'd say, oh yeah, when you're looking through the scope, I can see 2 dots back here in the back of your head. See, that would be really bright light if it goes all the way through your eyes and through your brain, and then you can see dots in the back of your head. That would be too much light. Okay, so you don't need that much bright light. And as a guy who spent hundreds, thousands of hours under the scope, don't use it. Don't give yourself a headache. Don't make yourself sick like that. Okay. So I've dimmed the lights just a little bit, and I got a few more adjustments. Now, one thing that I do, and I'm not going to do it right now because I'm looking, making sure that you can see on the camera what I need to show you. But when I look through here at the specimen, so I'm right now doing something else really important. I'm lining up a section over the hole, the lid hole. And I'm not looking through the scope to do that. I'm just kind of looking over here going, oh, okay, I got it all lined up. And I usually do this pretty fast. And now I'll look through, and I usually take off my glasses. So those of you that have eyeglasses, you can get your eyes much farther in on the scope by taking off your glasses. Okay? But it does mean something kind of interesting. When you focus without your eyeglasses, and then someone else looks in, if they have good vision or have their glasses on, they're going to need to refocus because you've focused also adjusting for the fact that you didn't have on your glasses. So sort of the prescription's different like that, and that's kind of weird. Okay. So what I'm doing right now, we had some kind of message on the screen. I don't even know what it was. I hope everything is still all right. In any case, so now I'm looking through the screen, and some of you might have encountered this before, another problem. And that is when you're on a scope, you can never get the darn thing to focus. Well, I want to help you there. We started out at the bottom right here, right? And so if I got a specimen over the hole, I simply use the coarse and I raise it kind of quickly, and I know what color my specimen is, which is red. I'm watching my working distance, that I'm not going too fast. And then all I do is wait for it to show up and be in roughly focus just by raising it up. I only know there's one direction to go. So I've encountered students who are just focusing up and down, and can't find anything. I'm telling you, start out of focus by being too far down. That's safe. And then focus as it comes up, watching, in case you didn't, somehow make some kind of other mistake, watching that, it's the working distance is still safe. So right now, with just rough focus, there you go, this whole thing's in focus. And you can see that working distance. I think you can see it. Let me get my glasses back on. And you can see the distance here between pretty much the slide down here and the tip of the objective right there. All right. Other things to think about. these eye pieces are adjustable. And it's kind of neat, paid extra for this. But when you move one sort of towards the middle, the other equally comes in. So it's nice and balanced on the center. And what you want to do is not have your eyes just pressed against the scope, but actually be back just a little bit and see if you can do these so that you get one good clear image. Now that is sort of a requirement for all my classes, that students can use a binocular microscope and see one clear image. As always, if you have any kind of difference about your physical abilities, let me know privately. We'll talk about it and we'll figure out if there's something that we can do. Okay? But for most of us, we'll be able, maybe take our glasses off and this will work better. So right now, this is well adjusted for me as far as the distance goes. Now, while I was doing that, I was noticing something else that I thought I'd tell you about, and that is, look at this. And this is a microscope that you can rotate the head around all the way over here, and you can look at it from that direction. So I could look at the microscope like this. But one of the things you should notice about me is that when I do that, and be true about you too, because the general morphology of humans is similar. So when you lean over the microscope like this, you're kind of hunched over. Don't want to do that for all day or a whole summer. So most of us prefer to use the scope configuration where the ocular lenses right here are pointed out farther away. Okay. Well, can we lock this thing in? Yep, that's what this little screw is right here. And that should lock it in place. I'm tightening it up a little bit, and it's pretty resistant right now to moving. There we go. I think I got it pretty straight. Got that tightened down, and that should last. If you need help, of course, call us over, and we'll help you fix that. We'd rather help you than have you break something because you weren't quite sure what you were doing. Okay, of course. So right now, I'm taking a look through these two eyepieces, and I want to show you another knob. And right now, we've got the good direction to show you this knob. If you look at this knob, it's going to move this great big thing down here. It's going to move this great big thing down here, up and down. Okay, so watch. See it go down? I'm moving this knob, and now it's going up. And if you look right now at this thing, you'll see that it's kind of lighted right there. It's bright. And that is light. The light's coming through from down here, the source, and it's going through this condenser lens. This is just a lens. It's not a light. The light's down here. And what this is doing is it's spreading out or focusing the light on the specimen. So now here's a really important and interesting question. As you go to higher and higher magnifications, does the field of view of the specimen, what you see, does it get to be smaller on the specimen and smaller on the objective, or bigger? So as you go to higher mag, I hope you know the answer already, you're looking at a smaller and smaller piece of the specimen, because that's what it means to be higher mag. Okay, so you're looking at me right now pretty much from the waist up. But if you zoomed in, let's say on this right here, it says Joggins Fossil Cliffs. It turns out I'm going to talk to you about Joggins Fossil Cliffs. It's a famous area. Charles Darwin wrote about it, and it's found up in Canada, northeastern Canada. So I'll give you a little talk about it later. But if you really wanted to zoom, you'd be looking at a smaller part of me, wouldn't you? Yeah, these are dinosaur footprints, lizard footprints, other kinds of things, and that's what I'll tell you about. It's a really cool fossil area. And you can go for free, yeah, except that you got to drive about 1,500 miles from Carlinville. So you're looking at a smaller area. Well, what about the light? So should you take all that light and blast a big area, even though you only want to see a little part? Or would it be better if when you go to higher mags, you can focus that light to the smaller area? And that's what the condenser lens does. It allows you to condense the lens, hence the name. It allows you to condense the light into a smaller spot at higher magnifications. And that's going to be really, really important. So we move that condenser lens up and down, and you'll notice it makes a difference. Generally speaking, when you're at higher mags, you want to be right close to the top, but then drop it down a little bit. You'll learn at another class exactly how to adjust this perfectly. It has to do with physics and some things about the objective. So we're not going to actually go into that. Now there's one more adjustment that really matters, and that's part of this condenser lens apparatus. Let's see what I need to do to let you see it. There you go. And it's a little bitty, kind of a lever right here. And what that is a diaphragm. Now a diaphragm, same thing in a camera in the old days when we had film. And what it does is opens up or closes. And so it turns out it's doing exactly what your pupil's doing. Diaphragm does what your iris actually does. Your iris, the colored part of your eye, is actually contracting and making a small pupil or a really big pupil. So in bright light, so right now in the bright daylight right here, at my window, my pupils, if you could see them, are pretty small. Because it's bright light, so the iris is closing down and I've got a little bitty pupil I'm looking through. Well, it turns out it has to do with the physics of light, but you like to close that light down using the diaphragm, okay? And that'll be something really that, boy, oh boy, when students look through this and learn to do the diaphragm, they say to me, wow, I didn't really realize the effect of closing down the light. So you reduce the light coming in through the diaphragm, and it actually makes everything much pops. You can see detail much better. This is especially true at higher magnifications. Okay. Now I was talking about posture before. I want to tell you, and I've picked pretty much a pretty good chair right now. It's not perfect. Yeah, it's not adjustable either. When you look through a microscope, you like to try to stay as straight as possible. And in the Zoo Lab, you know that the chairs, botany lab, cell biology lab, all throughout Mayhem, the chairs are adjustable. And you want to adjust it so that when you're sitting with your back straight, just like this, that's where the eyepieces are. And you can see it's not where I want it to be right now. So you can do that in two different ways. You can put books under the microscope and raise it up. But as much as you can be straight, the better off you will be. Okay, straight like this. Okay. So you want to be as straight as possible. When you look really quick, I think we're pretty good right now. So the plans for this semester are that when you come into lab, you might come in the morning into your lab section, you'll have just an hour. Or you might come into the evening study sessions, you might do both. When you come into lab, we will have stuff set up for you. And in almost every lab, at least in the first month or so, we're going to have microscopes just like this for you to look at a slide. And boy, oh boy, we're going to expect that you remember what I've just told you. Okay, so we'll put it into practice. See you there. And I hope you remember all of this.